Hey guys, John Lemme here, the founder of Conservative Business Journal and a host of the CBJ Real News podcast show. And I'm excited tonight to bring you a great story of a true patriot, a great story of a mom, someone who loves America, someone who loves a husband. And tonight you guys can hear from Michelle Black. She's an author, and she wrote a book titled Sacrifice, a Gold Star Widow's Fight for the Truth. Her husband, Brian, was killed in action as a Green Beret in Niger, Africa, which she's going to unpack. She's a Gold Star wife, a mother. She has two boys who are 13 and 15. And as you know, I have all brothers, so we love boys. Boys are awesome. So Michelle Black, welcome to the Conservative Business Journal podcast show. And I'm excited for you to kind of share your story about sacrifice and about how you've unpacked the truth with your husband's death and killed in action in Niger, Africa. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on, John.
So, Michelle, kind of take everybody back. Tell them a little about yourself, your story, and the word sacrifice, and how you kind of heard about your husband getting killed in action, and then how this all came about of kind of exposing the truth, kind of the cover up from the upper echelons of the military.
Yeah, my book Sacrifice is really it's a story about justice. Brian was killed in 2017. In what's known as the Niger Ambush. It was the largest loss of life on the continent of Africa since the Battle of Mogadishu, which many people know as Black Hawk Down. Brian was killed along with 3 other Americans and 5 Nigerians. And it pretty much instantly became this national news story. AFRICOM, which is Africa Command, opened an investigation straight away. And to see what really happened, because my husband was in the country to be basically training the Nigerian partner force. And it seemed odd that they were ambushed outside of their normal area. So after that, we received word and this investigation opened and the media was everywhere. And we were hearing so many different things from the media that this team was.
And like you said, like your husband was like a Green Beret is Green Beret. Like I read your husband's story and I read about you, and just tell me a little about Brian and kind of just his heart for the military and how much you love being. I mean, Green Beret is special operation warrior. I mean, it's elite. It's just an elite warrior. It's why we're so free today because of the special operate warriors. And what was Brian like? What was it like to say, hey, Michelle, I want to, because you guys got a great love story, correct? I know that too, right? You guys were together for a while and then got married and you got 2 boys. And so tell me about
Brian. He was incredible. He'd always wanted to be in the military and always wanted to be in the a Green Beret or a Navy SEAL. And when I first met him, he wasn't. He was actually playing online poker for a living, but he had a background in mixed martial arts, and he also was a national chess champion from the time he was little.
So you got MMA. So what happens if someone lost an online poker? Did he have him submit and have him tap out?
Actually, he was really intelligent. So the reason he enjoyed the poker was because he could run numbers and he loved numbers. And I think that's just kind of the way his brain worked. He was very into statistics. He wanted to become a trader one day. And so he just had all these things he was trying to learn all the time. And a lot of times when I would go over and visit him, he would have 4 chess tables open and 4 poker tables open, and he would be doing both at the same time, just click, 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 click. I mean, just going through and winning chess and winning poker. So his brain was just really, I mean, probably one of the smartest men I've ever met. And
that's one thing too. And I'm glad we're discussing that. So people don't really understand the intelligence and brilliance of those special operate warriors, either a special warrior, Green Beret, or Navy SEAL. They're people don't look as the tough guys and they obviously all the quote unquote action they do in the fighting and going through the hell weeks in the boot camps, but their brain capacity, they're brilliant. I mean,
Yeah, in
and
fact,
that makes sense, being able to do poker and chess at the same time.
yeah, and SFAS, which is Special Forces Selection for Green Berets, they actually have to have a certain level on their ASVAB score, which is kind of like a uh, intelligence score, um, before they can actually go into SFAS and try out to be in the Green Berets, because they want people who are at a certain level mentally, because they're known as the warrior diplomats. They're going to learn a language as well as have to prove themselves, physically. So before you can even do that. So when we had been married a few years, he decided to join the military. And after a couple more years, he decided to become a Green Beret. And all told, this process took about a solid 5 years. He
Wow.
went to, the first year going to just basic training and all of that. And he got through that. And we went to our first duty station. And then he had to train to go to SFAS, which I believe is a 1 month, 2 months away from home. And after that, it's another 2 to 3 years of training, especially since he was a medic and he learned the language of Arabic. And then later he would teach himself Hausa and French.
Guys, you understand what Michelle's saying about our incredible husband Brian, who's up in heaven now, just encouraging his wife to get the truth out for everybody. I mean, learn Arabic, French. That's just, I can't even speak English half the time with my New York accent and speaking fast. I mean, speaking that language, learning that is incredible. And what I want to do before we continue, let me show her a few pictures of your family there and your husband, kind of get a feel for everybody to see what we're fighting for here. And this is a great picture there. And that picture is when was that?
That was 2015 at his graduation from the Q course.
Now, was he still playing poker?
No, yeah. He didn't have time at that point.
That's excellent. And then this picture here.
That was right after we moved to Fayetteville, so that he could go through the Q course. So that was 2012.
Mm. And this is what I know is fighting fun. I know it's difficult, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing the story. That's obviously your husband with your two boys, good looking young men.
They are. They're beautiful. That was also at his graduation in 2015.
You want to hear a unique story? My dad, who's a vet, who's listening, he's 92 years of age. He's on tonight to the show, and he says he sends his condolences and his prayers to you. He's on tonight listening. Who's your oldest son? Your oldest son. What's your oldest son's name?
Ezekiel.
Ezekiel. That's the exact same shirt my dad had on last week. Remember the shirt he had on? Because my dad, I see you looking like a little boy. I'm not kidding, Michelle, right? I know he's laughing, right? Isn't that the same shirt? He took my mom to the doctor, so he dressed up. I said, "Where'd you get that shirt? Like the Dillard's little boy section?" I'm not kidding. So same shirt, right? I saw that before. I knew I'd get my wife laughing, because when she put the pictures on, I said I'd bring it up during the live show. So my dad is on. He's like, "Good looking boys," and that's awesome. Well, that's why we fight for the young man. So you dress your boys sharp, and so they dress like 92-year-old men. No, I'm just kidding, but it's just a funny story. So now he's like you said, he became a Green Beret after 5-year process. Then you said he became he was like the Green Beret's Green Beret. Kind of unpacked it a little bit, because like you said, as you unpacked this, they went into a mission. They weren't prepared enough. They were sent into basically to die. And we'll unpack that more. But tell everyone what that means when you describe Brian as a Green Beret's Green Beret.
So Brian, after he graduated, he went to Afghanistan, and then when he came home, he was so excited because he got to go to Ranger School, which means he is out being basically starved and running missions at Ranger School. And he passed Ranger School in 3 months, which means he had no recycles.
That's phenomenal.
So,
That's absolutely that's most people don't make through Ranger. That's phenomenal.
And that was his idea of a good time. He loved it. He loved everything about it. So then he got home. I know it's basically torture. They just starve these guys and teach them to think without sleep, without food. And they have to run basically drills as though they're they're running missions through the mountains, through the swamps, through the woods. So anyway, he made it through that, came back, went to Niger first time, and he was well known to go in and spend his time practicing his French and his Hausa with the local village chiefs, making friends. He brought me all sorts of gifts from the village chiefs. They tried to, marry him off to their daughters. Um, so he was the epitome of a Green Beret. He was a warrior. He was a diplomat. He knew how to ingratiate himself to the locals, and he was also the medic. So he provided medical support and veterinary support to all of the locals as well.
And like when he went to Afghanistan, so he saw combat. He saw combat in Afghanistan as a Green Beret, correct?
He did not. He was
Did
on a
not?
B team in Afghanistan. So
Okay.
this was his first combat. But if you knew him, the thing about Brian is nothing shook him. There was this story from the guys about driving through the middle of nowhere, Niger, and with all the trucks in line, and one of them, they all had their weapons up top, and one of them launched some sort of weapon accidentally off the top, all giant boom, all the cars shook, they stopped, screamed for the medic, and Brian's only response was, "Why? Nobody got hit. Let's keep moving." He just was very even keeled. Nothing shook him. And that's why when things started going out in the media about the team panicking, it wasn't in him to panic. He'd never panicked in his life over anything. And that's the other thing is I'm epileptic, and that was the one thing I loved about him is nothing that ever happened shook him. So if he can watch his pregnant wife have a seizure and just pick her up and carry her up the street to the hospital, he battled it, nothing shook him.
And that's why so take us to that day, take us to the ambush, and it was 4 Green Berets. It was your husband and three other team members, and they were heading back in a mission, and they got into and ISIS actually used his death they made it as a media for them down there. Many of you may remember it. It was in 2017, as she said, because I actually reading this when you guys reached out and we connected for the interview tonight to be a guest on our show. I remember the whole story when it happened. So kind of take it back. So tell them where they were going, what was the core of the mission that day, and I think they were heading back from somewhere, correct?
Yeah, they had actually gone up to an area called Tillowa. It was a town, and done a mission there, and they were on their way back. And then they were contacted by those higher up the chain and sent out on a mission. They said they did not want to go, that it was too dangerous because they were being sent up near the Mali border. This is not the story that we were given by the military or the government. We were told that, the team had gone rogue and acted like a bunch of cowboys and were hunting down a terrorist.
Like when you say that, like who said that to you? And then we're going to get into the great personal phone call you got from President Trump and what he did with you and your boys, and you asked him for some requests, and he met those requests. You guys are going to enjoy that story. But when you said the upper echelons told you, well, this is what happened, tell us a time frame on that, or that's what you knew something was not right. That's why you've unpacked it in your awesome book called "Sacrifice: A Gold Star's Widow Fight for the Truth."
Exactly. So AFRICOM had started the investigation. The media began to say pretty quick after that the team had gone rogue and acted like a bunch of cowboys. And it was just after that the headcam video was released, an ISIS propaganda video made using headcam video. And that showed my husband's death as well as Jeremiah's and Dustin's. And then, so this was between October and April. And at the end of April, we were briefed by the military, by AFRICOM, and I was assuming that what I'd heard in the media wouldn't hold true, that they'd say, no, these guys, they were doing what they were supposed to do. They'd push back. And, I would hear a detailed timeline. I was not given a detailed timeline. I was told half-truths and outright lies. They basically pinned all the blame on the team's captain, saying he did not push back, and that he had misled those higher up the chain with his con op, which is basically just paperwork, that described what they would be doing on their first mission. The problem with that, and they wouldn't explain it to me, is that they had completed the first mission successfully and done what the paperwork said they were going to do. It was the next two follow-on missions, which were handed down by those higher up the chain, which supposedly had correct paperwork. When I looked into it, they did not. One of them did, the other did not. But
And was that prior to the gag order, or because after the gag order, you were able to interview some people, but were you able to do this research prior to the gag order to actually converse with people? You had to wait till everything was opened up.
Correct. So all I knew was I was asking this line of questions in the brief and just being told that I should trust them. You know, the line I kept hearing is "Trust us, Miss Black. Miss Black. You'll see." You know, basically what a big deal it is that Captain Perezzini, you know, messed up his con op, his paperwork, and you know, basically how bad it is what he did. And I never did. I still had so many questions. They could not explain it to me by the end of my brief. And the very next week, the commanding general over all of AFRICOM, General Waldhauser, stated before the media that all teams on the continent were performing optimally, but my husband's team was not indicative of what special operators do. So after my husband and the men on his team fought and died, now they were going to be lambasted with no way to stand up and defend themselves. And at that point, I'd had enough. And the men on the team had been told that when the media brief and all the families had been briefed, when all that was complete, their gag orders lifted. And so the first thing
how long ago was that? What was the time frame?
That was May 2018. He had been killed in October 2017. So that was about 7 months after.
Wow.
So the first thing I did is I sat down with them and asked them if they would interview with me one-on-one. I said, there's always books. There's Benghazi. There's, you know, Lone Survivor, Black Hawk Down. Sure. I said, why do we have to wait around for somebody in the media who right now is telling the same story that AFRICOM is telling? Why do we have to wait for them? Let's tell our own story. So they agreed to trust me and sit down with me. So one-on-one, I began interviewing them.
That's phenomenal. Now let's, as we continue with that, let's go back to the phone call from President Donald J. Trump when President Trump called you, and you had a great call with him, and tell everyone obviously what he said, and then you had some requests, and you got two boys, and I'll ask you a question live as we asked before we went live. So tell everyone about that call from President Trump and what you requested and what he followed through with.
Yeah, it was amazing. He was just so friendly. And my son Ezekiel on the spectrum, he at the time was just obsessed with Trump. And we'd been to DC the year before, and he just wanted to stay in the hotel, and we couldn't really afford it. And so when Trump came on, he was great. He spoke to both kids, he spoke to me, and at the end of it, he said, if there's ever anything I can do for you, don't hesitate to ask. And I said, well, since I've got you on the phone, we're going to be up in Arlington burying Brian at the end of the month. And we can't afford to stay in your hotel, but I'd love to be able to do that. Is there any way you can provide us with a room one night? And he said, how about 2 rooms for 2 nights? Will that work? And I said, that's awesome. Absolutely. So he gave me 2 adjoining rooms for me and the kids. And I mean, we got there, and they had gifts for us, and the rooms were just decked out with also more, treats. I wasn't allowed to pay for anything. I could eat and drink all I wanted free in the hotel.
So there was no amenity card at the front when you checked in. You didn't have to give a card for amenities. It was all taken care of.
The only thing I had to do to get through that front door and get my key was give everybody a hug and accept a few gifts.
Wow.
It was amazing. And then he gave us a private tour of the White House while we were there.
And I asked you before, because I found this out, I asked you before I went live on the show. I said, so what did your boys like, the Trump Hotel or the White House better?
There was a lot of good food at the Trump Hotel, and they got to wear some pretty fancy bathrobes. But we did also get to move, because it was a private tour, we got to move some of the all the cordons. So we got to go into the presidential theater and sit in the seats. We got to go through the West Wing. We met Mike Pence, and we saw a motorcade leave the White House on its way to Capitol Hill. So it was pretty amazing.
Wow. That's wow. That's good. And that's obviously we always try to highlight the stories. Obviously, what we do here in the Real News, the Conservative Business Journal, is the real news. And guys, make sure once again, let me show you Michelle's book cover here of a book. Make sure you guys grab her book there. The Niger Ambush of a Green Beret team and the true account is told by the survivors' sacrifice. A Gold Star's widows fight for the truth. And you guys can get a hold of Michelle's book by visiting her website, which is michelleblacksacrifice.com, michelleblacksacrifice.com. Sacrifice, a Gold Star widow's fight for the truth. Just sharing the truth. And like she said, there's books in Benghazi, there's books on a lone survivor. So why not get the true story out? And that's so important. So guys, make sure, share it, get the book, get a boatload of the book, study the book, get it out to people. And it's so important because we just share the warrior stories. Like Carol said, I see a comment here from Carol. She says, I loving her story. Our beloved president of the United States is a true, wonderful human being. And then there's another one here where she said, we Americans are so blessed. They're warriors like a husband. I don't think most of us have a clue about our beloved ones who love us and our country so very much. Thank you, Carol. Carol's awesome listening live. And then Laureen said, gorgeous boys. Laureen's on live. She said, gorgeous boys. And I think a picture and beautiful family. So we got some listeners live on. So it's excellent, guys. And we appreciate that. So once again, michelleblacksacrifice.com. So now, dig into the story now. Like, when you first started to uncover, some, you kind of felt it was not right. So take us through that journey, and that's obviously what the book is about. The majority of it.
Yeah, there were so many things I learned. One thing I learned was that in the year leading up to the attack on my husband's team, there had been 16 attacks on, none of them had been on Americans, but there had been 16 attacks by militants in that region over the course of the last year.
Wow.
And one was within 10 miles of where my husband's team was attacked. And they were sent up alone. And my husband's team, when they were first turned around, said, we cannot do this. The only way we will do it is if a heliborne unit will come in. And so the higher up said, okay, we'll send a heliborne unit in. Well, there was a storm, which eventually came up and turned the heliborne team around. So my husband's team, while they were working on getting the heliborne unit up there, had started driving towards the border with Mali. And one thing I learned was that there were no roads, and they had only packed for a 1-day mission, and now it was turning into a 2+ day mission. And so that means weapons and water and food and all these things that now they're having to stretch and make last out in sub-Saharan Africa when it's 100 degrees out. And so now
was something, just interject for a second, because I read your story here and something you said too. Your husband was, it's funny because it's just like, I'm not a Green Beret or Navy SEAL, but I have a lot of quotes in my books about preparation. Like you said, your husband was always prepared, like 3 steps ahead. Like that being prepared for a 2-day mission and being prepared for 1-day mission becoming a 2-day mission. That's when that preparation foundation is out of whack, things are going to happen. Things will go awry, correct? And that's one thing that you noticed right away. Obviously, being his wife and obviously best friend for years, you understood that, which they'll never understand. They'll never understand the white suit boys in the Pentagon will have no idea.
Exactly. And so they and I think the other thing is they never went up to the Mali border for a reason. They would go up to this area, Teloa, and they would turn back around. But anything north of that was considered the Wild West region because Mali doesn't have the same laws as Niger. And so Niger was working with the US, Mali does not. So they're pretty much the Wild West. There are militants roaming freely up there, and there's no real clear border. But the US cannot cross into Mali. And so, but the militants can. So we couldn't chase them up into Mali. We would just have to, and they knew that. So what would happen is it was very dangerous for our guys because they could be followed and then set upon, which is essentially what happened. But so what I learned was my husband's team began moving towards the Mali border that night while the heliborne unit was supposed to be preparing. And once they got up there around 11 o'clock at night, they were told the heliborne unit will not be making it. Now you are the only team.
Wow.
going up there. And so they radioed back and said, "We would like to return to base." And that was denied. And they were told, "No, you need to move through the night and go exploit this campsite. And, if you see anybody up there, capture and detain them," which also they weren't really in country to do. They were capable of it, but they also weren't prepared for that kind of mission. They went up there. We were told there were no motorcycles. There was nothing up there. What I was told by the men is they got up there and they heard a motorcycle start up behind them, and two men got on and rode off into the desert. They sent their only asset, which was um, a drone, to follow the motorcycle, and it was found to meet up with several others out in the desert, and then they all split up in different directions. And by then the drone was running out of fuel, and so it had to be sent home. So the only asset that team had out in the middle of nowhere Africa was a drone that was running out of fuel.
Wow.
And their closest asset from that point, if anything were to go wrong, was 5 to 6 hours away. So
That's why, guys, you got to love the military, love the military family. That's amazing. And that's something you unpacked. Guys, once again, make sure you share this episode. Make sure you follow us on Telegram, Rumble, and Cloud Hub at CBJ Real News, and share our episodes. And make sure when you visit our website, conservativebusinessjournal.com, click on podcast. You'll see library of episodes, and it's all in alphabetical order. And you'll see, obviously, Michelle Black, Black. Black. Take the episode, share it. Also, make sure on your smartphone, download our podcast app. Our podcast app is on the Conservative Business Journal. Subscribe. It's free. Apple Store or Android on a Google Play. Conservative Business Journal, same. It also has the search feature by alphabetical order. So put Black in, it will come up. Share it, and I say it humbly, we're ranked in the top 1% of 2.7 million podcasts, and that's how we share the real news. Because you get this out to some people, 5 or 10 or 15 people. Hey, we love the military, but more importantly, we love a wife who loves the truth and loves her son and loves the country, and she's exposing, because there's a lot of people in the military who've never had blood in their hands in the military, and are trying to squash things. And I think it's so important that you're getting the story out. So guys, make sure you share, follow, like, and definitely purchase Michelle's book at michelleblacksacrifice.com. michelleblacksacrifice.com. It is, because get the truth out. That's as I heard that story, what went through your mind and heart when you first heard that, and your father-in-law, your wife, your husband's dad is assisting you with this. And he's a Marine, correct? He's a Marine.
Yeah, he's a Marine. And the piece I described is just one small piece of multiple things, of 2 days worth of things that were so different, the disparities between what I was told by the military and what actually happened on the ground, even things during the ambush. And so as we unpacked it and looked over it, it's so hard to look at something that was completely preventable.
Because basically, there was a cover-up going on somewhere. Someone was trying to cover their butt without them being exposed. And so what else did you discover that was obviously, once again, no holds barred, uncensored news? That's why we do what we do. So what was like the wow factor? Like when you looked at your father-in-law and you're like, wow, now we got the evidence. Like, this is what we're gonna expose this and expose this people, this, etc.
There were so many. One huge thing came down to the punishments. Who was punished for what? And Major Alan Van San was on paternity leave when the ambush occurred, and he lost his job over it. And the go more, or punishment, he was handed down was said to be for he was punished for lack of pre-deployment training. When I interviewed Alan, he was not in the position where he would have trained or had anything to do with the team's training for pre-deployment training before they left. Also, he was not capable of a process called he could not validate the training. And that's a very specific term in the military, to validate the pre-deployment training. And so that's saying that you're giving your stamp of approval. That had to be done by the battalion commander only. And then it would be looked over by the group commander and then that team would be sent off. So Major Alan Van Sant was not present for the training. He was simply handed the team to take over after the training had been done and validated and approved. He was punished for pre-deployment training. The person the two people who were responsible for the pre-deployment training, validating it and approving it, neither of them were punished.
Wow.
They also were the ones who pushed my husband's team ahead onto the mission.
Wow. And we actually have someone listening live. You see Jeff is on, Christy? Jeff Preston is a great friend of ours. He's an illustrator, he's a great artist, and he went through Hell Week as a Navy SEAL, and he made it through Hell Week, was about to become a Navy SEAL, but as I said, he got lazy, hurt himself, and we're good friends. And he got a little cut in his finger. No, he messed up his ankle and his leg a lot, and he was discharged, but he made it through Hell Week as a Navy SEAL, and he's on tonight. And he says, Jeff Preston says, Michelle, my heart goes out to you and your boys. A special forces wife are their own elite. It takes a special woman that you have shown in your never quit quest for the truth. You honor Brian. The boys are growing up without their father, but Brian stood tall enough. They will always have someone to look up to. Thanks, Jeff. You're awesome. Jeff's a fellow military man, fellow Navy SEAL, and he's a great guy. Jeff, next time, don't trip in a Navy SEAL. And he's a good friend of mine, so I could say that to him. He tripped and fell after all. He made it because his issue was running, as you know, as a wife of Green Beret, they're running like crazy, the Special Warrior boys. And he finally was running really good. And he went through a Hell Week and he hurt himself running after he couldn't run. And then he kind of an inside joke. But thank you, Jeff, for your words, brother. We love you, brother. So continue, Michelle. You're awesome.
Yeah, so I've heard a lot of those stories. Brian actually had to recycle one portion of the Q course because he landed wrong out of an airplane jump. So we had a close call there ourselves. But
Jeff was a parachuter, right? I can't picture Jeff with a parachute on. Jeff's great. He's one of the greatest artists. I mean, his artwork's actually you'll see what's where. On our business, we have the conservativemarketplace.com where I promote my books and some other products on that's our number one supporter and our sponsor of our show is conservativemarketplace.com. And under artwork, you'll see some of Jeff's artwork. He's a phenomenal artist, a phenomenal illustrator. He actually did all of the illustration for the Navy SEAls afterwards in his career. So he just can't run, but he can do good. Good. So that's awesome about the process. Q course, Olympics. So after you start to expose that, just a couple final questions. What went on when you start to unpack and kind of poke the bear a little bit, kind of expose some situations in the military? What?
There hasn't been much blowback. But when I interviewed the guys and I saw all this, that's when I said, okay, I'm going to write this book. And I'll learn how to write. I'd never written a thing in my life, but I figured, you can learn something new if you work hard enough, right?
Sure.
So I went ahead and got an article published in the New York Times. That was my first article in December 2018. I'd finished collecting my interviews that September. So got my article published, picked up an agent from there, and right around that time, it took almost 2 years after the incident. I think it was May 2019 when they finally released the final redacted report, AFRICOM did.
Wow.
And so I finally got my paper version. And as I flipped through that, I was beginning to write the actual proposal and manuscript for the book. And it was realizing that I have proof of the lies now because it's written down, and the redacted report it completely contradicted itself through different sections. So that to me was pretty frightening, realizing that if I do go through with this book, I will be going up against AFRICOM and the military.
And what is AFRICOM? I know you stated a couple of times. Just for the listeners, what is AFRICOM?
AFRICOM is a combatant command based out of Africa. So it is the combatant command over all of Africa. And there are 8 combatant commands under the DoD. So, and they cover just different areas where we have people working in the military all over the world. So anyway, so that's AFRICOM. So they were the main command over all of Africa when Brian was killed. And so anyway, when I got their write up, that's when I realized what I was who I was calling out. But it's the thing is, I don't believe it's like any organization. It's not that the organization is bad, it's that there are individuals who are selfish and making bad choices. And I believe that the general who headed up the investigation and those under him basically made choices that put my family and all the other families and all the guys on the ground in a bad situation, and they're responsible, you know? And so for me,
Sure.
I wasn't necessarily going up against AFRICOM. I was going up against these commanders who did something wrong, and hopefully one day will be held accountable for it because I'm not going to be quiet.
Good. That's right. Keep spreading the news. And I want two final questions. Did you mail an autographed copy to Donald J. Trump?
You know, I didn't. That's
should.
That's a
You
great
should,
idea.
because you should, because like you said, he remember. He's very focused, and he loves the military. He remember your story. Mail an autograph, just mail an autographed copy right to Mar-a-Lago. It's 8 minutes down the street, literally. He'll don't be watch. I guarantee he'll remember the story, and he's a reader. Get it out to him. Okay. I just wrote that down as you were speaking. I said to Mike, because I didn't want to. I want to remember to ask you that question, because that's important. We actually, my niece wrote. I have it down here in my office. So our niece, how old was Lexi back then, Christine? 10. My niece was 10 years old. She's from my wife's family's from Tennessee, and she wrote a letter honoring veterans and Veterans Day, and the teacher said it was so good they actually had to read it to the whole school, and it was so awesome. And we were going to see Marcus Luttrell and Lone Survivor and David Goggins at a Patriot tour, and where was it, in Alabama we were going to. And I told my niece, I said, I'll get that signed by a Navy SEAL. And that was it. And she's 10 years old. And she's telling me about it. I said, Uncle John, I said, oh my God, I got to get this now signed. And I go there, and you got David Goggins, Marcus Luttrell, and all the Navy SEALs, massive security. Long story short, I ended up getting signed by David Goggins. Then we actually mailed it to President Trump with the note from her. And he wrote a note back to her, which she has framed in her, talking about kids and thank you for your commitment and everything for the military. Yeah, it was really that's something that will be in her life for the rest of her life. So all the nonsense you hear about Trump, I mean, his core for the military is tremendous. So definitely get an autographed copy out to him. He'll and then put a little PS. Say PS. My boys love your robes. I just pump his ego about the Trump hotel robes. Guaranteed. I just know Trump and all that good stuff. So final question. What's been some of the response from the book? What's been some of the reviews and people reading it? What have some people said to you and your father-in-law about it?
People love it. You know, and one thing I've said since the beginning is it's not, you know, it's not a right wing or a left wing story, a Democrat or a Republican story. Right. It's an American story,
right?
You know, and we should all care because, you know, another goal of mine when I started it was not only to bring the truth, but to bridge that gap between civilian and military. And I've gotten a really good response with people who've never been in the military saying, I was able to understand this. I was able to understand all of the military jargon and really come into that world because I was not raised military. So being able to write a book to civilians that explains military was a little easier for me because I'd never been in the military until I was 30 when Brian joined, and then it was like, here I am in this military world. So
were you married a chess player, a poker player, and an MMA guy?
Exactly. I had no clue he was going to become a Green Beret next, you know. So we were just a couple of ski bums when we met, really.
Wow. I'll tell you, great wisdom. And guys, once again, let me share a book up there. So make sure you guys grab a hold of a book. Sacrifice, a Gold Stars Widows Fight for the Truth is available at Michelle Black Sacrifice.com. Michelle Michelle Black Black Sacrifice.com. Michelle Black Sacrifice.com. Pick up numerous copies, get them out to people, and it's just been a great story. Christy, any questions or anything? Great interview, great story. I think it's important getting it out, and I think I believe it's excellent. And send that copy out to President Trump, and he will Guarantee you'll hear from him.
Okay. I will do
Especially since he did all that. Because he's the best is the 2 rooms, the adjoining room, and put the boys in one room to go crazy, and you have your peace and quiet in another. So he'll remember that. So and it's so important. And one more question: How's your father-in-law been with the book and the response? And when you guys finally read the final manuscript, because I've written books, and you finally you read it a zillion times, you always find this word, that word. What was it when you finally got that first copy in your hand?
You know, it's funny. Him and my mother-in-law live right up the street from us, so we were up there, and I read the book for them often. And so, but there was something about it. She's a photographer, so she came and took pictures of the stacks of books, and we split the first box pre-release, and so it was one of the best and most emotional things in both our lives. I think to have something positive come out of something so horrible.
Wow. Michelle Black, thank you for your time. Thank you for writing a book, and thank you for the ultimate sacrifice of your husband's life for our freedom, and your 2 boys. And tell you, you're gonna find. I'll get a picture of my dad in that shirt to you. You'll laugh. It looks like Ezekiel's shirt to the T. I just said to him, "Would you buy that shirt like a little boy store?" It was hysterical. It was last week when we saw the shirt. I mean, he's on tonight. He says, "God bless you." My dad's on. So Michelle, thank you for your time, guys. Once again, make sure to visit michelleblacksacrifice.com for the book. Grab a hold of the book, Sacrifice: A Gold Star's Widow Fight for the Truth. And when you go to her website, she has all the interviews there and all of her social media contacts. So definitely share the news, spread the news about Michelle's story, and purchase as many books and get the message out. Good night, Michelle. Thank you very much. God bless you. Tremendous. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.